It's Charlene here. I'm just coming up from doing an analysis of a couple reporters, and I thought I'd share some things that stood out to me. I looked at two reporters who cover AI, which I don't know if you know, AI is kind of a big deal right now. And I thought it might be helpful to understand what goes into this coverage. So I looked at two reporters, one, Madison at Axios, and two, Molly at Morning Brew. And digging in, I thought it was fascinating just how they both approach things. One, they're very similar, right? They're writing very succinct, clear, concise stories, but with really deep expertise and zooming out and providing larger market analysis and what's going on in the world. And so the question is, how do subscribers try to engage with reporters like this? They seem really big, unattainable, all the way out there. They're not including a lot of quotes. They're not doing, at least in their stories, a ton of details coming from interviews. But like any reporters, they still have a lot of conversations. They need to understand what's going on in the landscape. And so I'm here to tell you how to engage and start thinking through that type of strategy. For these folks, their stories tend to be heavily financial, market driven, but not necessarily to the deep sense of earnings reports. It's understanding where's the money going, where is it coming from, is it sustainable, and how is it flowing. They do focus on those large, big name tech companies, right? The Googles of the world, the Anthropics, the OpenAIs, the NVIDIAs. And so the question is, where is there room? Is there room to try to show up and get in? And I would say that there is. Like I said, they're trying to understand what's going on in this really fast-paced industry and how are companies keeping up and is it sustainable? And so as we think about how to engage them, it's giving context to third-party reports. It's tapping into your lower bench that might be software engineers or AI prompt engineers or the people actually doing the work that can give additional context and color to industry reports that might be publishing to start coloring how they're thinking and should they be believing what they're seeing. And that's how you start building that relationship with them. When you think about and compare the difference between the two of them, I would say Molly, there's a lot more opportunity to lean in and a little bit more of an increased possibility of landing some type of coverage. She's not as heavily focused only on those top techs. She covers a lot of AI, but also a lot of just general culture, business, retail, what's going on from a consumer lens perspective. You're also going to invite a little bit more, I say, colorful analogies and funny little slide jokes. When we look at Madison, she's going to be that deeper tech. So tapping into partnerships, relationships with those large big tech companies your brands might be having and using that as maybe an entryway in is going to be a good start too.
Question that really you're perfect to answer, Charlene, because you work so many years in Hotwire with tech clients, and now you work for Stanford. Now, what would motivate a tech company to spend time with a reporter who is not likely to even mention the company name? Why should they clear the schedule to talk to somebody who is not likely to publicize the company?
Yeah. I think when I have these conversations with clients and with stakeholders, it's all about relationship building and influence. When I weigh is something worth doing and is it a useful use of our time? I think about our key messages or what are we trying to say? And is this the right person we should be saying it to? But then also the output, like what's the result of it? If they're not publishing anything, was it a good use of time? But also their influence. Are they showing up in front of folks that we want to? And with reporters like these, they're not just gonna talk to you once and immediately publish and take your commentary. These are relationships that need to be made and cultivated, and they need to have that. They need to, and you need to have that trust with them in order to see that product down the line. And so, my dad and my grandfather loved to garden and do trees and a lot of nurturing in that state. And there's those plants that we know that grow really quickly. You can plant them and cultivate and pull up really quick. And then there's those plants and more specifically fruit trees that take years of time, investment, love to build and become something beautiful that actually produces fruit. And so thinking of these reporters and media relations in general, not necessarily as a quick turn game of what's the hits. I need to see some type of results. but where can I invest now that is likely going to give returns later down the line? And there's a balance in how you engage. Should your whole strategy be these type of people? Probably not. There's a good mix to be had with both types.
I like your idea about the deep bench because you can get other voices that represent the clients more holistically. So, one of my questions is, would you advocate that these engineers or the people that are sort of in the backwaters, can they be trusted? Do they need to be meter trained before you put that in front of a Madison or a Molly? And before you answer that, maybe one of the answers to that question is, well, just ask them to talk for background. So they're simply trying to build a relationship with the reporter, and the reporter can't trap the person because they can't use directly what it is that they're saying. So that would reduce the pressure on both parties, I think, both the client, individuals, and the reporter. Is that a good strategy, would you say?
Off the record can be used strategically to help build relationships. I think when we talk about putting someone in front of a reporter, trust is a big deal, right? Like we want
Sure.
to make sure that they're able to show up and they're going to represent us well. And even if, and that counts, even if you trust that they're going to stay on message, even if they don't necessarily stay on message, you trust they're not going to say something crazy in front of a reporter or go completely off brand. And what I would say is, as we think about tapping into that deeper bench, there's a couple things that I've learned, especially at this role at Stanford, is one, being able to identify those folks that you trust, those folks who, one, have a story to tell, a valuable story that can be beneficial to have the perspective of those doing the work and deep in it and who understand and have a passion for what they do. And when it comes to media training, it's less so much for those type of folks of stay on this message, say this thing particularly. There's the trust of I trust that their experience aligns with what we see as a company and organization. And the media training is more focused on allowing them to understand what that interaction is going to be like. What does it mean when they're talking to a reporter? What does it mean that everything you say could become the headline of the story? It's not off the record unless it's said beforehand. And how to more aptly navigate that kind of conversation. So it builds that trust even more that, okay, when they're in those conversations, they might get deeper technical conversations that honestly, as comms people, we might not fully understand. But if we give the tools to someone that we trust to say, here's some maybe watch outs, or here's how this conversation can go, they can be more advocates and ambassadors for themselves and for the company and be able to navigate that effectively for themselves too.
Well, I'm a huge fan of what you're advocating. And as we've talked about privately, I think eventually the AEs and the senior AEs and the account soups, eventually they're going to have to stop pitching the friendlies at least once in a while, try to go big game hunting, but that's a whole other skill set that you need. And your work was so important in this project to help people understand how to elevate that approach and how to motivate that echelon of reporters to pay attention. So thanks so much for your hard work.
Thank you, Sam. I mean, I love the phrase big game hunting because that's what it is. You find a target, like, I'm going after that person. I don't know how we're gonna get there, but we're gonna figure out. And that's what I want to do here. That's what this research is meant to do. If they seem unattainable right now, but we're gonna slowly break down, okay, who's influencing the Madison and Molly's of the world? And now who's influencing that? So eventually we'll have a step-by-step guide from the deep enterprise tech friendlies to the tier one corporate all stars. And so hopefully we'll have an easier roadmap to get there.
Thanks again, Charlene.
Thank you.